please rise for the pledge. And Ms. Justin, if you're there, if you could please lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. All right, Suzette, if we could please do roll.
Yes. Ms. Klug.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Sikich.
Present.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mrs. Justin.
Here.
Mr. Ustruck.
Here.
Mr. Schultz.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser's excused, and President Emmons.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do we have any modifications or additions to tonight's agenda, Dr. Hoffman?
I have nothing.
Move on to item 6 on our agenda this evening, our public comments. If you are here for public comments, if you could please put your name in the chat, which is located on the bottom of the Zoom meeting. I will call everybody one by one. Make sure that everybody has a chance to speak, and you have 3 minutes to address the board. Please list your name and address when you begin. I will wait a moment to see if anyone has their name registered. We do not have any public comments in the district office right now. So be patient for a moment. All right, I do not see any public comments registered in the chat this evening. So that being said, we will then move on to item 7, the superintendent's report. Dr. Lexman.
Thank you and good evening, everybody. I'm going to apologize here at the outset. I am not feeling well. I actually went and did a COVID test today. And so I'm going to get us through the superintendent's report, and then Deidre's going to take it from there. I'm going to bow out after that. But the team will be able to get us through the rest of it. So with that, I'm going to share the screen. See if we're going to need to share sound maybe. Move you guys out of the way. Oh, sorry, I jumped into the wrong place. Let's start at the beginning. So this is our update on our return to school plan. So for the January 25th school board meeting, and there's quite a bit in this one this time. Again, I'll just touch on our guiding principles that we've really focused on as we've moved through this. I'll touch on where we are with the external health metrics, a little update there, the internal metrics, and I just received the most recent community metrics, the external ones within the last hour from our health department. Then that internal, the count of active quarantine and monitoring. Then we're going to look at where we landed with method of instruction, how many students in each of the options right now. Then Deidre will talk us through the training that's been ongoing for teachers as we get ready to make this transition to what we call distance learning, or a lot of districts call it hybrid learning. A little bit of background information on the plans for meals. So there's a number of active links in this presentation today that I'll touch on here and there, but they'll all be available publicly. Then where we are with face masks, there's quite a bit of information around our personal protective equipment. So that is all the plexiglass and the masks and the hand sanitizer. And we thought we'd give more depth and detail because we're getting quite a few questions there. So we're going to go into some detail about where we are with that. Then our health department has asked us to do a head count of employees that would be interested in receiving the COVID-19 vaccine when it does become available. We're actually going to be meeting with the health department to discuss vaccination procedures, protocols, are there opportunities to use our facilities. All of those kind of things are kind of on the horizon. And then of course, always next steps. So the guiding principles, safety and well-being, and we continue to focus on that. Learning that works for all, and that is one that I think becomes more and more important right now, as we've heard from parents that, for some kids, virtual has been a very good thing, and for many, many kids, they need to be back in schools. We're trying to continue to be responsive and flexible, and then what we're doing has to be practical to implement. So in terms of the metrics, and again, like I said, I'm gonna have to move you because I can't see the bottom of the screen. Sorry. The burden rate has gone up since a week ago. We're in similar ranges, but at both in Milwaukee County and West Allis, have gone up, but we're still in the high category in West Allis. We haven't gone back to very high. That would trigger at 350 or higher. But the percent positive has come down. So now, sorry, I forgot to put the little arrows in there. But both for Milwaukee County and for West Allis, West Milwaukee. So it's mixed news in the external data right now. But at least we're not surging, right? So we talked about if we start surging in these numbers, then we would push pause on our plan. And the way this looks to me right now is we continue to go forward with our plan for distance learning, with social distancing and all of those pieces in place. Internal metrics, we've talked about the internal percent positive or the percent positive cases. And so that has come down a little bit. And we watch this every single day, but I just grabbed the once a week, kind of where it lands on every Monday is the way we're picking this up now. And so we're in the range where we think we should be to continue to move forward with our phase 2 and 3. This is the internal active quarantine and monitoring. And so for, I have to move you guys again, sorry, staff, as of last Friday, just 1 positive that is known of, 20 that were in close quarantine, that's 6 that are work related, and that's mostly coaches, so it's athletics. And neither staff or students are in the monitoring group right now. And then for students, it was 7, 103, 51 were school related. It's almost all athletics where we're getting spread. So there's lessons to be learned here. And I think the better job we can do with making sure our masking and all those practices are in place when we bring students back, the better opportunity we'll have to keep schools open. So in terms of the method of instruction, so you could see where we were a month ago before we did this last opportunity for parents to change. We actually went up a little bit in virtual learning. We went up quite a bit in distance and down in person, right? So we're going to have just over 4,900 students join us for distance learning phases 2 and 3. Again, that's only half of the students at a time. And the reason for that is to provide for social distancing, right? So that we can keep students in all, as much as is reasonable and practical, right? 6 feet apart from each other and 6 feet apart from their teachers. And so the numbers in that little swing really came from the in-person learning, but there's still, 2,200 students that are going to be all virtual. And what we expect to see is that probably stays that way through the end of the school year, unless we get to a point where vaccine is widely available and available for kids. And so that is science that is not complete yet in terms of the vaccine for kids. So training for staff. So we had a number of questions here, and the board has received some communication about what training, or maybe there hasn't been good training in place. There's quite a bit that's been going on. So Deidre, if you want to pick it up on this slide.
You bet. Good evening, everyone. So a couple of the things we've been doing to really have all staff prepared for this next phase are we put together as an executive team a whole list of training. And I just took a couple of the screenshots of that list so you could see where there's links to all the videos and training you would need and how to use your PPE. There's links to the nurses coming to each school and doing a training. And that is, I think we're done now. We might have one more tomorrow. But the nurses have gone to every single school site. They run an FAQ with the school to make sure that teachers are getting their questions answered about what are the health and safety guidelines from the medical field that need to happen. That also, they go through a training on what to do when there are students who are sick, and we've got protocols on that, and how do we get a student from a classroom to the isolation room if we suspect that we need that. They go through what's the safety guidelines for how long there's exposure in a classroom while students are meeting lunch. And so it's really an intimate opportunity for the staff to ask any of those health and safety questions that they have straight from the nurse. And then if anything comes out of those meetings that seems to be a misunderstanding or a lack of clarification, we're following that up with emails, and then the nurses are going back for another meeting. And then they have an FAQ going with each school so that if a teacher says, hey, I guess I wasn't really clear on this. We had a great example of it today where a teacher was concerned that her room doesn't have enough ventilation to provide good air quality. So Steve and team, she knew exactly who to reach out to. Steve and team went over there. They did all kinds of measurements about the filters and the air quality and the air exchange rates. And then that satisfied the problem that we were having because the teacher understood that the air quality in that space meets the guidelines that we know are safe. So then tomorrow we also have department and grade level meetings. And now that we don't have to account for everybody trying to truck into school, they actually can happen at 7:30. Because with the potential snowstorm, we would, I have a late start to tomorrow. So at 7:30 tomorrow, we have grade level team meetings from all the first grade teachers across our district. And it's an hour to say, hey, what are some great strategies you have for what they call concurrent teaching, which is teaching the kids that are online at the same time you're teaching kids that are face-to-face. On top of that, we have department meetings tomorrow. And then we've also added some sessions for Study Sync and for Alex that the teachers had asked for. So we sent out an interest survey to 612 teachers who use those two tools and said, what are the tools you feel like you need the most training on right now? And then we worked with the trainers so that schools are having their own time with these trainers to just say, hey, what does this really need to look like in my classroom? And the trainers are all aware about exactly where we are as far as moving from virtual to distance learning. We've offered this year some webinars. There's some really good webinars on concurrent teaching that just recently came out. So we shared that with all staff. We have some self-paced courses that we purchased at the beginning of the year that have a ton of great tools and strategies in them. Staff chose them at the beginning of the year and they've been able to use them throughout the year. And if other staff wanted to add in using one of those self-paced courses, we do still have some subscriptions and some licenses left. And then school by school, the schools have been doing professional development. Either they had it planned for the 18th where they brought in an outside speaker or they brought in someone else, or they've been doing it just in-house. And then some of those are yet to be scheduled for tomorrow because tomorrow's the official PD day. So we've been having a lot of those opportunities throughout. It varies a bit school by school because it depends on what that school has chosen to work on with some of their PD time. And then another thing that is available are the tech teaching tools. So we've had a lot of questions around how will I possibly film myself and be watching the class and doing all of those things. So we did quite an extensive amount of research and worked with our teams to say, what would those tools look like? And then we came up with a little kind of manual. We have right now 20 of a camera called OWL. We talked previously about a camera called Huddle for some of that work, but OWL actually met our needs a little bit better. So they actually send you an email saying your owls will be flying into Nest. So our owls flew into Nest the other day. So we now have our OWL cameras and we've allotted a certain number to the schools each. So a teacher could check those out if they needed that tool. We have 200 tripods that are available that will hold up an iPad if the teacher wants to be able to do some filming or have the Zoom up open where they can see it while they're standing up in the classroom. And then we have a bunch of GoPros, which are little cameras that teachers can use to easily record a lesson to put it online for some of that asynchronous time. On top of that, I met with all of the art department. I met with our physical education teachers and I met with all of our music teachers because their role is really unique, especially at the elementary where they're doing both. And we just had a really good conversation around giving themselves some grace, making the plans they need to, but also making sure that they really communicate with families. So if they're using a little bit more of that asynchronous time at the start, because we're all just getting used to this, that the family has some really clear direction on what that student should be doing from home during that asynchronous time. And the parent knows exactly what to expect as far as when the school should be on and when the student should be synchronous and when the student can be asynchronous. So that is about all the ones. Oh, and then tomorrow we also have a training for our teachers, a refresh training in Gizmos, which was a request by our science department at our high schools for simulated labs. That's really, really good. And so as the teachers are now really trying to figure out how to get into the nitty gritty, we also have a training for them tomorrow on Gizmos, because that's what they had asked us that they needed as a resource.
Great, thank you. So meals, right? So there have been questions around meals, and the plan really developed out of the returning to school committee. So the great big committee, and there was a work group that worked on it. And the plans vary from school to school. So this idea that all kids are eating in classrooms is not correct. Some kids will be because it was the best solution for that particular school. And trying to keep the number, the congregation of kids to small numbers, because, we know that COVID will spread. And so that we don't have suddenly, 70 kids, 80 kids, 100 kids in a cafeteria where there's been an exposure. And now all of those kids are suddenly quarantined, right? So it's a balancing act, like I've said many times, to try to manage all of this. And so it was really trying to prioritize keeping groups of kids small, and that reduces the risk of spread and the need for large quarantines. Teachers do not eat lunch in classrooms with students, right? They supervise, and teachers have a separate 30-minute duty-free lunch, right? So that's part of the plan around meals. And then there is a link in the presentation. So every single school has their breakfast and lunch plan and who is supervising. And you'll notice under the who is supervising, it varies. You see a lot of admin, some assigned teachers, some building aides are part of it. And that's actually pretty typical, right? So that's pretty typical about how we manage to supervise lunch. And so you'll see even like a Hoover, breakfast is in classrooms, but lunch is spread out between the field house, a multi-purpose room, and half of the gym. Right. So again, that priority, trying to keep the numbers of kids that are together in relatively small groups.
Marty, can I just add one thing to that? There is an update to a little bit of the link to that document where a couple of schools were relying on their specialists to do some supervision. And we've asked them to go back and look at that plan. As we know, our elementary specialists are the only team at elementary always doing double duty kind of in these next couple of phases where they'll have the in-person kids and the online kids without having the opportunity to work within a pod. So we've asked schools to make sure that they remove their duties from the duty schedule just to give them a little bit more breathing room this year. So a couple of the ones that say they're going to tap into some of the specialists, we've asked them just to go back and revamp the plan to remove access to that. And then a lot of the questions that the nurses answered were around kids eating in breakfast in the room, or kids, if they were supervising breakfast, what's the safest way to do that? And so the nurses were able to give some advice to some teachers as well.
Good, thank you. So then plexiglass, right? We've heard quite a bit about plexiglass, and we started with ordering it based on, what principals were doing with their leadership teams, reviewing where kids were going to be working in close proximity. So where we need 2 students sitting at a table. So plexiglass goes on that table. Plexiglass is in all of the main offices. And so following the January 4th decision, there was a lot more interest in plexiglass, and Steve and his team have been working as fast as they can and getting as much plexi as they can in-house and placed and installed. And that's all going to be done before February 1st. Steve and his team are absolutely committed to this. We're still going to accommodate additional orders. If we can get the plexiglass, we'll keep adding to it if it provides peace of mind for people, and it's just one more way to try to keep people safe. But you'll see some of the detail numbers here. There's so far 5,600 pieces of plexiglass have been delivered to schools. That's a lot of plexiglass, and that doesn't count what's been made in-house, right? There's 1,200 tri-fold plexi units. Those are they can be moved, right? So you can transport them. They're portable. There's a little bit of a picture of one here. So you see, so that could be put around a teacher or around a student, or it could be put, several of them with, if kids are working in small groups. There's 1,200 of these that have been delivered out to schools. All of the allocations of plexiglass have been tracked. And so we know exactly, all of where they are in terms of what's been distributed. And this little spreadsheet also then has, how many buckets of disinfecting wipes are in every single building, how many N95 masks, and then the ozone generators as well. And so there's been just a lot of coordinating that's had to go into this. I need that little thing to go away. There we go. There's still, hundreds of additional plexiglass units that are being installed right now. And so just like I said, it's been a top priority for custodians. They know this. And so they've also been taking pictures of classrooms. And again, this will all be available publicly. So if people are curious, like, well, how is it set up? So I'm just going into central. There's the office that's central with the plexi. This is, I think, a picture from the cafeteria. No, sorry, another one from the office. Let me see if I can find another. So here's teacher desks with the trifolds on them. So you get a feel for it. So there's pictures from every single school about how Plexi has been set up and used. So we'll, share this out. And if teachers are curious, they can go into the links into the folders and take a look how Plexi's been set up in their particular school. And again, if need be, we'll continue to order plexiglass and we'll install it as fast as we can. But we have spent $215,000 on plexiglass. I believe that was the right number. It's covered up on my slide right now. So the other things in terms of our PPE, so face masks, right? So all students, families, staff, everybody wears a face mask unless there's been approval for a medical condition where it's just not appropriate to wear a mask. We have face shields that can be then worn, and some teachers have asked to have, to wear an N95 mask and a face shield, and we'll accommodate that as well. We're not going to allow gaiters or bandanas or scarves to be used as face masks. They're not recommended. We want to use, what we have, so cloth or disposable or N95s. We currently have inventory to provide each staff member and student with 2 face masks. We also have clear face shields, and we also have clear masks. So you've seen those for some kids that where it really, the teacher needs to see kind of the way their mouth is working and some of those kind of things, or learning to read lips. So we have all of that ready to go. And that too has been tracked. So this is the PPE that's been delivered for our isolation rooms. They're health monitoring rooms. We don't call them isolation rooms with kids, especially younger kids. But you see that they're all set up with all of the PPE. Everything is ready to go in these rooms. Again, there's one in each school.
Marty, can I just add
Yep.
one thing about the plexiglass, if you don't mind? So the other thing, we met with each one of the schools to kind of review their plan. And one of the questions we asked was, what's the general vibe? What are the teachers in your school really concerned about? And there was varied from school to school, but when we asked each school, like, how are you doing with your plexiglass installation? We got an update from each school site, and then we knew, oh, wait, we better get some extra help to the school or that school to make sure that they're set and ready to go. But the other thing we also shared is staff can wear that face shield all day long if that would make them feel more comfortable, just like Marty said. But that also is almost like having a piece of plexiglass covering your face all day long as you move about the room or as you do other things. If you want the face shields on when you're in a small group with kids, so we ordered additional face shields to accommodate that as well for a teacher who maybe thought more of their room should be covered in plexiglass than what we ended up ordering or doing. A few teachers wanted something that looked kind of like a toll booth for them inside plexiglass. Well, that's not practicable, right? That's not going to help right now, but putting the plexiglass barriers where they should go, and then encouraging the teacher, if they're nervous about that, to wear the face shield with their mask is something we also told each school was allowable for staff as well.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. So this is the other PPE that's all set and ready to go, right? So we've got 29,000 cloth face masks for students. Those 1,200 portable barriers, the 1,000 buckets of hand sanitizing wipes, the 195 ozone generators, 1,000 buckets of surface disinfecting wipes, 925 gallons of hand sanitizing gel with pumps. Then we also ordered 1855-gallon drums of hand sanitizing gel. So we have a lot of sanitizing wipes and gel. And then again, what we just talked about, the face shields. There's 1,200 delivered this week, the N95 masks, and then all of the signage and hand washing stickers and all of those kind of things that have been put in place as well. Here's a little bit more about the clear face masks that I talked about. We have them for adults and for students. Then cloth again, the social distancing floor stickers that, there's different ones for carpet and for tile, digital thermometers, and those are all in the isolation or health monitoring rooms. We've capped off all of the drinking fountains, so they're water bottle fillers only. And then we have over 1,000 little bottles of hand sanitizer gel that are coming in this week. And you can also see just what we've gone through in terms of disposable masks and rolls of floor tape, getting everything situated for our return to school. So in terms of the vaccine headcount, we did a quick survey at the request of our health department. And this has been something that it's not just West Allis, West Milwaukee schools. Every school district has received this request from their local health department. And so we're at about 1,100 employees. 803 are interested in taking the vaccine, and 89 respondents saying they're not interested. And that is also very consistent with what my superintendent colleagues have shared, that they're running 80% right around there in terms of interest. And so we also have Jeff Thompson in his area, we've with the nurses prioritized employees. So if we can get into 1B with some educators further in front of the line for vaccines, so it's going to be our nurses that already have access to it, but then it's going to be the people who work directly with students that may have feeding tubes or have to be fed, have diapering needs, or have to be worked with in very close proximity for OT or PT. And so we've prioritized by name, and we'll share that with our health department as well, and then talk about what other needs they may have in terms of vaccine distribution. We're also having a similar conversation with Zach at the Wellness Center. So as soon as we can be a part of it, we'll be ready to go, and we want to support access to other people in our community if that's what our health department needs, because we do have a lot of physical space, and we'll work with them as requested. So next steps, right? So we know that orientation days are coming for grades 4K, 5K, 6, and 9. That's this week, and so each school has a plan for that. And then distance learning begins February 1st. So families have received their bus transportation cards and all of those kind of things that would normally happen at the start of a school year are taking place or have taken place, right? Again, we have a Monday, Tuesday group, then a Thursday, Friday group. And then Beth and Tess have done a really nice job updating our website. So now it's called Your Guide to Virtual and Distance Learning. And almost everything I talked about is here, including our health metrics dashboard that I did update just within the last hour or so. There's still information here on virtual learning as well, so about the calendar and how we get going. The student health screener, which will be regular reminding. It's very important. We're going to do a lot of reminding about this, that reporting positive or probable cases of COVID-19. And there's a separate special email that goes right to the nurses. So COVID WAWM nurses. And again, information for visitors, the expectations around face masks, the method of instruction, and that's now set through the beginning of the fourth quarter. So we will ask again, unless when we come back to revisit the entire plan on March 8th, if the board would like us to head in a different direction, but that's the plan as it stands right now. And then here's the information for virtual learning, because again, we're going to have 2,200 students that remain all virtual. So that's where we are in terms of getting ready to bring students back into distance learning, so for hybrid or distance learning, beginning with orientation this week and students back in classrooms with us next week. So there, I'll pause, Stephanie, if there's any questions from the board.
Marty, can I just add one quick thing
Sure.
to that as well? Right on the website as well, we added the link. Gary had expressed an interest in making sure each school had a family night, so that there was an opportunity for parents to just hear the specific plan at each school, as it's been part of our practice to decide the framework at as a district team, and then each school site having some impact on the things that happen at that school based on the needs of those learners. So it's on the first top, I think, a little down. There's a tab in there. If you scroll down a little bit, there's a tab in there with all the meetings. You just missed it, but that's okay. It's at the tab it's the first line, distance learning school meetings for families, and then it says a schedule of meetings. Like
I was looking for something.
Yeah, I was looking for something bigger at first too. But that's also in there. So that's a schedule of when all those meetings were happening. And then we asked staff to think about recording those or making short videos to send out to students and families as well. so that we could make sure that families really had the opportunity to truly understand the plan and the framework that we've provided, and then the plan at each school site. And so a vast majority of those meetings are already done as well. And again, thank you, Gary, for pointing out that would have been really nice to make sure every school did one of those for families, because that it allowed us good feedback to follow up on with all the school teams.
Great. Any questions for Dr. Lexman on the return to school plan from board members? No.
Hi, just a few. First, as far as these 2 days, today and tomorrow were originally scheduled, the majority of that time has been geared towards allowing teachers time ready to prepare for hybrid instruction. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Deidre, I don't know if you want to add more.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one a little bit. So today is the teacher record keeping day. So today was a day that is always for teachers to complete grades. It's the transition day between semesters, especially at our secondary schools. It's the day for the teachers to compile the rest of the grades. Tomorrow was a day that we had originally added as a professional development day. So that's why we scheduled some meetings when we made an adjustment to the board calendar a few weeks ago, and added this day as a professional development day. It really was designed to be a professional development day where we could have some structured meetings around some of the things that align in our strategic plan, as well as some of the things staff are going to need to have in front of them and ready to go for when students are back in buildings next week. And so some schools, we allowed some flexibility, chose to do some of their meetings on the 18th and leave the planning time today for tomorrow. Some schools did a bit of both, and some schools did a flip-flop. It was between those 2 days, 8 hours of planning time, but then there could have been up to 8 hours of regular professional development meetings, things like that.
Okay, but as far as grading, today was basically supposed to be the last day for, grades and stuff like that. Is that my understanding? Yes. Okay. So there's more than that. My next question is about, do we know, I don't know if it's possible to say without exposing who received the vaccine, but do we know how many people were able to actually get the vaccine for the district, since we were looking at, kids in buildings technically on Thursday?
So for staff, the only ones that we're aware of are our nurses.
And is that just due to the health department not allowing us to do more?
Right. At that point, that's so they got into the 1A group, and that's it at this point.
Okay, so the OTPT, they couldn't even they weren't allowed?
Not yet. Right.
Okay, that is something that I understand this is by a municipality, but I know other districts were able to do that with their health departments. So I'm disappointed that we weren't able to get that to work with ours. I know it's not our control, but OTPT obviously has hands-on with students. So I think that it's important that we get them in, and I hope we can stress that to our health department as well.
Yeah, we will. The next meeting is 3:30 on Wednesday.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have a little more to update after that.
All right. And then, so I'm glad to see the metrics are updated. The percent positive going down is expected. I would have been concerned actually if that hadn't happened. And the burden rate going up is also a little bit expected. So we need to make sure to watch that carefully and combine that with our internal metrics as we get 2 weeks in of people in buildings to see how we're actually doing with that. I have a slight concern that we have so many exposures in athletics, considering that overall the transmission rates were relatively low over summertime when that was occurring. And the only reason that's a concern is because obviously the people who are participating in athletics are then going to also participate in school. And if they're exposed in athletics, that would then extend that exposure to any classes if they were not aware of that beforehand. I can't imagine they know the night of whatever participation they participated in that they were actually exposed. It's probably going to be the next day or the day after that. And so that can then get big fast. So I hope that we're ensuring that those mitigation efforts that we have in place at athletic events are being followed to ensure that we can keep this as limited as possible, because it can get out of hand quickly.
Yep.
Noah, would you speculate at this point that the potential rise in the athletic rate for exposures is due to the fact that all the sports in winter are indoor? And maybe we didn't have the same issue with athletics in fall because it was outdoor sports, similar to like the spring, that it may not be the same level of burden with spring sports that they're outdoors.
That's definitely possible. Obviously, we can't.
Right. I don't know for sure.
Those that are moving around, and I mean, over the summer and whatnot, these are obviously outdoor sports on big fields. I mean, people congregate in buses and on the benches and stuff like that as well. But it's just something that, looking at what we have right now and the very limited interactions that we're dealing with, not that these are huge numbers, but it can easily spread to a lot of different places when we're talking about people coming to a team from different grade levels and things like that, and then going back to different grade levels and pods and so forth. So just a point of watching, I guess.
Heather, I'm sorry, no, were you done? I was going to call it.
Nope, yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good, okay. Heather, go ahead.
I was just going to mention too that, these sports, winter sports are much more close contact to some of the stuff we had in the winter. I mean, in the summer and spring, like wrestling is very, very close contact. So that might make the differences why the numbers are higher. They're more closely actually touching each other versus volleyball where they're on opposite sides of the net and things like that.
Yeah, it's all very possible. Yep.
Gary?
Yeah, regarding the sports comments, remember the high-risk sports identified by the CDC, soccer and football, did not take place in fall. They would be taking place in spring.
Correct. Yep.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right. Seeing none, we will then move on to the next item, Dr. Lexman.
Okay, the legislative update. So Governor Evers stated the state address that was on Tuesday, January 12th. So he delivered his speech to the legislature. He's declaring 2021 the year of broadband and will provide in his proposed budget $200 million over the biennium to fund broadband expansion in Wisconsin. He's going to call a special session of the legislature to take up a plan to modernize the unemployment system in Wisconsin, and that's actually in the news today. He's also going to include provisions in the 21-23 budget proposal that will require the legislature to hold public meetings for the map drawing process of redistricting. So that's what he's proposing at this point. According to supporting documents from the governor's office, the broadband recommendations for the governor's budget will invest about $150 million in broadband expansion grants and leveraging federal and private funds to do that, reducing roadblocks for local municipalities for unserved or underserved areas, allow electric cooperatives to use easements. So these are just really kind of the technical things that get in the way of expanding broadband. Creating an internet assistance program, so $40 million in reducing costs and making the internet services affordable for tens of thousands of low-income families, so that would help many of our families. Creating a broadband line extension grant, and then maintaining funding for the TEACH subsidy program and for the TEACH infrastructure grant program, both of which help schools. So it's quite an investment. You can see that's, the broadband initiative is $205 million, the expansion grant's $150 million, and then the total internet assistance program would be $40 million. He announced that he's going to deliver his state budget address virtually at 7 p.m. on February 16th, and so we'll be watching what he's proposing for education. And then at the federal level, I think we all know, but on January 20th, 2021, Joe Biden was sworn in as the 46th president of the United States, and Kamala Harris was sworn in as vice president. And then in recognitions, at Horace Mann, we want to thank Amy Groff for helping our parents and staff with tech questions and iPad fixes. From Leadership and Learning, a donation of bilingual books written in both Spanish and English was made to the West Milwaukee Intermediate and Longfellow Elementary Schools to honor the legacy of Maria Monreal Cameron. Monreal Cameron was the longtime president and the CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Wisconsin and worked tirelessly to support the Hispanic community in Milwaukee. She was forever committed to bringing up the next generation of future leaders, and she passed away in January of this year at the age of 75. And 2 teams from our district were invited to present at the 11th National Convening on Personalized Learning Conference. It's going to be February 8th and 9th, virtual. We want to thank the team from Frank Lloyd Wright Intermediate School, so Ashley Malucha, Madeline Meg, Crystal Clem, Carrie Clark, for preparing a video and presentation for the event. And in addition, Deidre Raymer and Adam Hengel created a video and presentation for the national conference. And so that one I think I want to highlight even a little further, because it really suggests that the work we're committed to in our strategic plan, and even though we spend so much time these days talking about COVID and reopening schools, the work in our strategic plan and our deeper learning commitment goes forward. And the fact that we're getting invited to national conferences, I think, says that we're doing some good and interesting work. And then special thanks to our intermediate school deeper learning coaches, Carrie Skonecki, Julia Nels, and Kelsey Nowak, for their work on our math course sequence. This year, more students took geometry in 9th grade than ever before. So our coaches are focused on helping teachers move all students to higher level math courses. And then there's a whole list of people that I just want to thank and recognize all the members of our leadership team. This has been a very unique past 11 months. And these are the folks that work tirelessly to get ready for a return to school. And, I've said many times, the goal all along has been to get kids back in school. And so we think we have a plan in place to do it as well as anybody and as safely as we think we can, and to try to better meet the needs of kids as we go forward. And then just the last couple updates. Most of this has been addressed. Public comments from our January 11th board meeting. So in the presentation, again, we'll make it available publicly. So teachers want to explore the details further, but the concerns around meals in the classrooms, we've talked through that, the plexiglass, and then continuing to use external health metrics. And we are committed to that. And so we'll be monitoring that. Then the facility planning process goes forward. We actually have a communication team meeting tomorrow morning, and that's a regular kind of standing meeting now with our architectural firm and the engineers, myself, Beth, just to make sure that we can continue to kind of move forward with our overall plan and strategy to get to a facility master plan. And then the facility advisory community team, that next meeting is on February 2nd. And so that work continues. And then lastly, right, we're all aware that there's going to be probably the first major snowstorm for us in this part of the country tonight and going into tomorrow. And so we need our facility staff to report, but because we have a professional development day, an extra one planned, we just got fortunate in the timing of all of this so that everybody else is going to be able to work virtually from home tomorrow. And so our facility staff can get ready for the following day. And what I like about the coincidence of it all is that what normally would happen is that superintendents get up early and we make phone calls in our quadrant, the quadrant we're in, with Greenfield and Greendale and others. That phone call is actually scheduled at 3:45 a.m. and I don't have to go tomorrow. So for me, it's going to be a nice snow day. So I'll be online working from home and with some of the facility pieces with Beth. So that concludes the superintendent's report. And with that, I am going to sign off. And wish you all a great rest of the evening and meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Lexman. All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda this evening, our board reports. So item 8.1, the review of the board calendar. So again, tonight is January 25th. We have a regular Board of Education meeting, and immediately following, we do have a closed session. On Monday, February 8th, beginning at 6 p.m., we do have a regular Board of Education meeting. Monday, February 15th at 6, we do a workshop tentatively planned, so please make sure that that date is kept on your calendar, although the workshop topic has yet to be confirmed. And then Monday, February 22nd at 6, we do have a regular Board of Education meeting. All right, moving on to item 8.2, our board committee reports. We've been waiting to start these, so that's exciting, a new part of the evolution of our board meetings and our board work. So item 8.2.1 is the Communications and Community Relations Committee. So Mr. Sickett and Ms. Kaler, if you'd like to go ahead.
Oh, Jeff, you're muted.
You're going to be sorry. I make a lot more sense when I'm muted. Anyway, as chairman, I will make our presentation. We met last Monday, the 18th. All of our members were there. It was nice to have Tess back. And unfortunately, we had one member due to health concerns could not make it, but the rest of us were there. And kind of like a progress check of what we were doing, we had our Neola policies. And topic number one was our Neola project. Some of the key details involved there is that we had discussed all of the current policies that are covered in the 9000 series. For example, what was our 800, example, the 811 parent family involvement is now with the Neola policies in 9000 under relations with parents. 2 policies relating to veterans have been added. We had none, and you remember last year, year before, we gave a diploma to a vet and really didn't have anything to really follow with, but now we have some. They are tied to the state statutes and underscore the reasons we are using Neola so that we're pretty consistent with what the state statutes are for not just this policy, but for all of them. And we talked about how we need to have these type of policies as part of our school board policy. So we're not coming up with something that later could come back and bite us because we weren't aware of one of the technicalities or legalities. Our next action on that is we're going to review the policies on our own, and any comments or questions we will be addressing at our next meeting. Topic number 2 is a new logo for the school district of West Allis, West Milwaukee. We have looked at lots of different examples. We continue to work with our consultant on this project. And when this project is complete, we will be presenting at a Board of Education meeting or at a workshop. That's been keeping us busy.
Does that conclude the committee update, Jeff?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the next one, which is 8.2.2, our Employee Engagement and Culture Committee. And Mr. Keller, Mr. Thompson, go ahead.
Yeah, so the Employee Engagement and Culture Committee met last week on the 19th. We really had one major topic that we were focusing on, and it was that the Neola policies and talking through that and what we could expect in terms of the process going forward. So we're going to be responsible for reviewing the policies in the 3000s and 4000s, which relate to professional staff and our support staff. So we went through a few of those in our meeting, talked through those and kind of discussed our process for how we'll be taking a look and submitting feedback as we move forward with those different policies.
Wonderful. Other items, Brian?
Nope, that was our agenda for our last meeting. So we'll be meeting again next month.
Wonderful. And there's obviously with the Neola project, it's huge and widespread and wide scope. And so obviously that is going to take up the majority of our committee time going forward. But as a reminder, Beth did send an email to board members, I think today, with again, reminders and updates of when commentary and questions were due. So please make sure to stay on top of that. If you tackle one of the thousands, like every 2 days, you'll be able to get them all done in their thoroughness by the deadline. So making sure that you're staying up to date with your reading and your analysis of those too. So please get those in. You don't want to cram for those in the last minute. So that's going to be rough if you do that. So nobody wants to pull that all-nighter. So thank you to our committees for the first of the board committee reports. These are great. And it's good to have an insight into the committee work that's happening, both for board members, but also for the community at large. So thank you very much for being our test pilots on the committee reporting structure. So thank you. All right, we will move on to our consent agenda for the evening. There are 4 items. Item 9.1, the approval of minutes. Item 9.2, our employment summary. Item 9.3, the supplementary contracts. And item 9.4 is our financial summary. Does anyone need anything separated? If not, we look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? And all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It does pass. Deidre?
Yes, thanks, Stephanie. And so we have two very exciting members of our team that we have just approved in the summary. One of them is a secretary for the nurses. That's been a big question for a lot of people, is how will the nurses possibly manage potentially getting hundreds of emails every day with, I saw my uncle's friend brother, and do I, need to quarantine, and those kinds of questions, as well as like, I'm really sick and do I need to quarantine, and all of those things. So we have hired a secretary for the nurses. So that was one of the things that was approved in that one, just to add that extra support. So we really can keep the contact tracing as very tight as possible. And then we can really make good decisions as far as when we actually need to quarantine, because that impacts then being able to keep schools open for staffing reasons. So that was a really important one. And then this one is super exciting. I'm so pleased to introduce Connie Bergman, who has now been named from the interim principal to the principal of West Milwaukee Intermediate. Connie, in the time that she has been the interim principal, has just impressed all of us tremendously with her thorough approach to the work, her thoughtfulness when it comes to instructional practice and trying to help staff and support them and get creative in how we are going to do all of this. It was at her suggestion that Ashley Dooley be a teacher that was featured on that UWM radio station, because she just knows every single staff member, what they're doing instructionally and what they're doing for kids at West Milwaukee. So it was an absolute pleasure for us to recommend her to the board as the permanent principal. So Connie, did you just want to take the floor and share a few words?
I just want to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity. I wanted to thank Dr. Lexman and the school board for giving me this opportunity. And of course, all the directors who answer my countless text messages and emails, whether it's Saturday or Sunday evening, and making the transition from Hale over to West Milwaukee very seamless. And of course, Matt Lesser, who has taught me so much about academic growth and progress. It's been a great opportunity. I've had a great first couple months, and it's just my honor to serve all the parents and staff at West Milwaukee. So it's been a great couple of months, and I'm really excited to do great work at West Milwaukee. So I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, and congratulations. We're excited for you too.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back. So thank you.
Yep, got it. All right, thank you.
I just want to say Connie was assistant principal when my son attended West. So when she was named interim, I was really happy, excited, because she really did a great job. So welcome back, Connie.
Thanks, Gary.
Wonderful. Thank you all. All right, we'll move on to our action items for this evening. Item 10.1 is the approval of the number of open enrollment seats available for the 2021-2022 school year. I will let our staff take that conversation.
I'll jump in and introduce it, and then I'll pass it over to you, Erin. And so these are similar numbers to the ones that we saw in our workshop. They always take a little bit of an adjustment between the workshop and when we actually bring them forward for approval, but they are pretty darn close this time. The one addition to the numbers this time are the specific numbers of the seats we have available for students with special needs, which is a little bit higher than we've had in the last couple of years. We've had some of our students with special needs choose private schools or other places that were open face-to-face. Our enrollment numbers in special education have gone back up quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. So we'll make the necessary adjustments to staffing as we need to going forward for that group. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Erin.
Thanks, Deidre. Just to recap a bit, in the workshop we discussed and went through our projected enrollment for the 2021 school year. And then we went through how that projected enrollment breaks down by school, and then the process for using the projected enrollment to determine the number of sections that we will require to staff for the 2021 school year. So given that, and then given the second Friday count, as Deidre mentioned, this is the number of open enrollment seats that we're projecting and or recommending for to allocate for next school year is 223, and there was no change in the number of seats from our workshop to today's meeting. So with that, I guess I'd be open to any questions or thoughts from anyone.
Questions on the proposal? Noah?
This is probably more for Deidre. It's just regarding the special ed seats. You had mentioned that there were a lot of our students who went to different schools during this time frame, but they might be coming back. I presume not all of those were open enrollment. Some of those were resident students. And so if they're an open enrollment seat that goes somewhere else, do we have to provide them a seat if they decide to come back if it was open enrollment and they unenrolled from the district?
No, if it was a student with us under open enrollment who chose to decline their space, they would have to reapply for a new seat as a student with us under open enrollment. And we did factor in just the same calculation we used for the regular ed seats for resident students that may have chosen to attend somewhere else because they preferred a face-to-face option, who there's a high likelihood would be coming back. And we're seeing a little bit more of that recently, some coming back into our district now. And so the numbers that we've put for the potential open enrollment seats, remember, have to align to the level of services that the student with a special need requires. And so this year we're able to support some level 1 and level 2 students. Level 3 students would be students who are in a far more restrictive placement. And our caseload calculations, you do all the numbers around it and get into a very long and detailed spreadsheet around it. But those classrooms, we do not support that we have room and space in those classrooms. So if we had 4 fourth graders who applied for open enrollment seats and they were accepted in the regular open enrollment, and they were a student with a disability who was classified as a level 1 or a level 2 after review of their IEP, and their name came up in the lottery in order, we would be able to say yes to those seats based on these numbers, but it still has to meet all the other criteria that's eligible for open enrollment seats.
Okay.
And to your point, no, we did when we factored in the projected enrollment, we did factor in that 50% of those students that left would come back. And so the 223 is inclusive of the 23 students that we allocate for open seats as well. So we do have a little bit of the room baked in.
Okay.
And just adding one more thing to that, we've also worked really hard to reduce the caseload size for our teachers who work with our students who have special needs over the last couple of years. But our board policy hasn't yet caught up to some of the adjustments we've done to caseload size. So that will also change going into next year once we adopt the Neola policies. So our board policy, the way we had originally set, targets a bit of a higher number than kind of how we typically staff, but you follow your board policy until you have a new policy, especially when it comes to open enrollment. And so we were hoping the Neola policies would have been done before kind of some of these moving pieces happened, but it'll be next year where we'll calculate those on a smaller caseload calculation than we have in the last couple of years. So more aligned to how we currently staff, which is an effort to reduce caseload sizes so that teachers can really provide the necessary supports and so that they can co-teach in the regular ed classroom more often.
Well, good. That's glad to hear. I know that special education is a very difficult place to fill sometimes for both EAs and for teachers. And so I'm glad to hear that we have been trying to reduce caseloads and that our policy will then reflect those changes that we've made in district. Aaron, I have one question for you regarding these students that are coming back after unenrolling from our district. How does that affect the funding formula as far as, these are obviously not kids that were here possibly during, our third Friday counts or our second Friday counts in January. So, how does that reflect? Because obviously this plays a large role in how our funding works.
Yeah, I mean, and I can let Caitlin speak to that too if you have any thoughts additionally, Caitlin. But in general, if a student that's a resident student, is open enrolled out to another school district, it kind of depends on the scenario, Noah. So if a student goes to a private school, I don't believe that if they're not here for third Friday, we would get any funding for that. If they're open enrolled out prior to third Friday, we do receive a portion of funding for that, although the majority of the funding for that student does go to the non-resident school district. But if the open enrollment student comes back, we only are required to pay the non-resident school district for the number of days a student did attend. So really it's if a student attends a private school and then comes back post third Friday, it's my understanding that we don't receive any funding for that student for the year. Is that correct, Caitlin?
Yep, that's correct.
And then I know there's some legislation or some proposals to try and not affect our funding for next year. But do we then get to add those students back into our funding formula if they were unenrolled and then came back later in the school year?
Any students who are our resident students, who are here on third Friday, we receive funding for. And if we have a student who open enrolls into our district, we receive funding for that student on a per student per day basis, regardless of the third Friday count. So ultimately, we receive funds when our resident students are attending our district on third Friday, or someday prior and someday after.
Okay.
Other questions or comments on the open enrollment projection? Now we look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. All right, move on to item 10.2, and 10.2 has multiple pieces. So we will take a look first. So this is the approval of the WIA co-op renewal applications. There are several applications, but we will go through those. We can eventually, if you like, approve them as a unit, but we will be able to discuss them. Jeff, real quick, what's that?
When we go through these for voting, can you take out 10.2.1 and 10.2.2? I need to recuse myself on those two.
Okay, we will then look to take them all individually.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will introduce this one as well and then pass it along to our experts in this area. So these are co-op sports. As we know, we want every accessible opportunity for our students to participate in a sport or extracurricular in any way, shape, or form. That's important work as part of our strategic plan. We know the benefits of sports and team sports especially go well beyond just participating and learning that skill for the rest of the skills students are learning that really do align quite a bit to our deeper learning work. So expanding those opportunities whenever we find them is always super important. So this first one are renewals for sports that were already in a co-op with other districts around, and then there'll be another agenda item to actually add an additional sport as a co-op opportunity, so that again, our students who are interested in those sports get every opportunity to participate. So with that though, I will pass it over to Justin and Greg Lucas, who is the athletic director at Hale, for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet Greg yet, and Shelley.
Okay, I apologize. I don't have the agenda up in front of me. Are all the current co-ops together first, or?
Yep, so first we're talking about boys swim, girls swim, gymnastics, boys tennis, and girls tennis.
And as Deidre previously mentioned, those are all current existing co-ops within our district. So I don't know if there's any board questions, or Justin or Greg, you want to add anything on our current co-ops?
These would just be all the co-ops that Hale and Central are a part of. There are 2 additional co-ops in hockey that those will be coming at a future time that Central is a part of with various other schools.
Noah, you had a question?
Yeah, I just noticed that on all the ones from the Greater Metro Conference, the signature was on the wrong line. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, Suzette noted that, because I've got the hard copies here, signature. Yeah.
I didn't know if it mattered.
Just wondering why for boys swim, girls swim, boys tennis, girls tennis, it includes the year 22-23, and gymnastics does not.
The WI has those sports on a 2-year cycle and gymnastics on a 1-year cycle.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions on the renewals of the co-ops? Okay, to request then, we will go ahead and we will take these individually to make sure that we can respect individual voting for board members. So I'll begin and we'll look for motions on individuals. So we'll be looking at 10.2.1, boys swim and dive. Need a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Additional comments or questions? We have 2 recusals. Yeah. Two recusals. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Great, thank you. Taking a look at item 10.2.2, girls swim and dive. We would look for a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We have 2 recusals. Okay. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Item 10.2.3, girls gymnastics. Look for a motion.
Move to
So
approve.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item 10.2.4, boys tennis. We look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 I'm getting the hang of this. Item 10 point, opposed? All right, that passes. Item 10.2.5, girls tennis. We look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, those passed. Thank you guys very much. All right, move on to item 10.3, the approval of a new co-op, the WIA boys volleyball.
And again, this one just expands another opportunity for a co-op to make sure that our students have access to be able to play boys volleyball. So as a new co-op, I don't know, Justin and Greg and Shelley, if you want to add any additional details or how many we anticipate or why we've shifted to a co-op or any of those pieces.
Sure, I'll kick it off and then obviously open it up for Justin and Greg to contribute and answer questions. So we're presenting this recommendation tonight with the support from both of our athletic directors along with their school administration, both of their full coaching staffs, and additionally some parents to present this co-op. You can see in the purpose there, they're on a kind of a tight timeline. The first step in the process is to get school district and board approval. Then in order to advance it, they have to both have approval from their individual conferences, of which they anticipate receiving. So that would be approval from the greater metro to leave the greater metro, and then approval from the Woodland to remain in the Woodland with a co-op versus a single high school team. And then upon that, they have to have this to the WIA by Monday. And as you can see, this has been sort of in progress for a while. This recommendation was brought to the board back in 2016. A few differences between then and now. Participation has continued to decline. There was, I guess, a little bit of, I guess you could call it almost an increase this year in participation, but some of that the ADs have attributed to, and they know in conversation, boys that were not able to participate in football and or soccer this fall use boys volleyball as an opportunity to stay engaged and stay exercising and active. So they've done some surveying of players, and you'll see when they return for next season, they anticipate some small participation numbers. They anticipate 2021 Hale to have 14 players and West Dallas Central to only have 4 players. So you can see not enough this year. They had barely enough. Central did for a varsity squad with 10 athletes. And for those that don't know, volleyball is played with 6 at a time. And there's also some very specialized positions. So not having large numbers to choose from really limits their abilities to have a competitive squad. And the same thing on the Nathan Hale side. Even though they had more numbers, still they could use, it would greatly add to their program and just overall success district-wide of these 2 programs to co-op. I will say the huge difference between now and 2016 is parent support. I believe in your packets was included letters from both Central and Hale side in support of the co-op. And at this time, I would turn it over to Justin and Greg if there's anything to add, and then also then to the board for questions.
I just want to add that I think this opportunity would be important for our student athletes in our district, as it would give them the opportunity to compete at a level that is appropriate and where there's an opportunity for them to succeed. Currently, in my time, in my 3 years at Central, anyone who's had interest in boys volleyball has played at the varsity level. So that means a ninth grader or a first year student athlete is going right up to the varsity level. If we had the ability to co-op, it would put us in a position where we could see student athletes playing against like opponents and allow them the opportunity to build. Right now, we're worried that we see students either discouraged and not interested in going out or not maintaining because they're playing at a level where they can't compete. So we're hopeful that a co-op can grow our numbers in the future and maybe even get us to 3 teams here in the short term as West Dallas, West Milwaukee United, or whatever you want to brand it as.
All right. Any questions for the group tonight? Noah?
Yeah, just a quick question about which conference that we were in. Was there a reason why we decided to go into Woodland Conference and not in Greater Metro?
Yeah, that was twofold. For facility concerns and space, it is easier to manage at Central with the field house as opposed to Hale has the challenge of a dual facility. So if it's a Central-led co-op in the Woodland then, and then also we do feel there's a little bit more of a chance for us to be competitive in the Woodland. So full disclosure, that was part of the conversation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on volleyball co-op?
I just want to add one comment to that. I think it's remarkable over the last couple of years how much unity around youth sports that we've had and how much working together the teams have had, where this wouldn't have had parent support a few years ago and it does now. That's a lot of credit to the school programs, a lot of credit to Beth working with our athletic directors and Shelley doing all of that work over the last couple of years to really make sure that we are looking at it from a whole scale district perspective and making sure all of our students have those equitable opportunities. So it's really good work. And it's really impressive that this was a much easier sell because it's really what's right for our athletes. So we're really proud of that.
All right, we would then look for a motion on 10.3.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's great. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing this forward for our students and for our athletes and our families and our community. So thank you very much. All right, going on to item 10.4, the 2020-2021 school calendar change. I feel like we just did something like this. Deidre, if you'd like to go ahead and...
We're trying to win a prize for amending the school calendar the most times in a single year ever. So I think we might be at that one. I think we might be getting there. So this is another change to the school calendar that we'd like to propose. We will be in the distance learning phase during the week in which we have a professional development day currently scheduled in the calendar for Monday, February 15th and Tuesday, February 16th. And those back-to-back days for professional development have been very powerful for us in the last couple of years because it allows us a lot of time to work on something unified as a district and then combine that with some time back in the buildings to do some planning. But given that this is the year that it is, we are foregoing that as the prime function of those days in order to make more sense for what's right for students that week. So we are proposing that we will move the Tuesday professional development day from Tuesday, February 16th, and instead have that be on Friday, February 19th. We will have some scheduled meetings for teachers on the 15th, but the 19th would maintain a planning day for teachers that week. And while it is an adjustment and a little bit of short notice to some families who were going to take advantage of that long weekend, for which we apologize, students can still participate virtually on the Tuesday if they're a Monday, Tuesday student, and then option to participate virtually that week as well if they were the Thursday, Friday student. And the big advantage to it is that students who get in the routine of coming to school on Mondays and Tuesdays are not trying to adapt to coming to Thursday that week. And we don't have to move all the buses around and a bunch of that functionality. We will just be getting in the groove for kids to get used to this. And it feels like messing with all of that for 1 week, for one day on either end, just really doesn't seem to make any sense for our learners at this point, or isn't in the best sense for our learners. So we are proposing that change.
Thank you, Deidre. Noah, your question?
I just wanted to say that this also makes sense from a safety standpoint to not mix. And not that we're mixing, but you're taking and moving one cohort of students to a day of the week that they wouldn't normally be there. And our cleaning day is normally on Wednesday, which would then separate those two. So by having them on either ends of the week, it still maintains those cohorts, which is important for trying to keep kids in school as much as possible.
Yep. And the other thing, just to add to it, I know it's in the exact summary for you to see, is Tuesday would not have been a originally scheduled payroll date for educational assistants. And so this way, they will have the option, communication goes out to them tomorrow, to add a day of pay into the calendar. And that's something that we can budget for within the current budget. And so therefore they actually get another day of paid time for those that choose it for that Tuesday. So we felt like that was also a way to honor the great work our educational assistants have done during all of this time as well, by providing them that additional opportunity for income.
Great, thank you. Questions on the proposed schedule change? If not, we look for motion.
So
Move to second.
Moved and seconded. Any final questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Great, that passes. Thank you very much. All right, move on to item 10.5, the approval of the virtual charter school starting with the 2021-2022 school year.
So thank you again. So this one has become a labor of love for me all of a sudden. And so I'm super excited about this. Mr. Johnson has chosen that he does not choose to continue moving on with us into the planning phase. So I am currently in the planning phase and started writing the grant process for this whole thing over the weekend. And the more I wrote about what we're trying to do with this virtual academy, the more excited I got about it. And so I'm just so proud of how far we've come in some of our deeper learning work, that this could be the opportunity we present. So I also took some time last week when I was trying to wrap my head around what this was all going to look like, to consult with some of the people that we've consulted with across the nation in the last couple of years. So asking some experts, like, what do you think of this? And is this a good idea? And the amount of feedback I got that said, that is amazing. And that's what every school in America should be doing, is a school that's still framed around our deeper learning work, but has a virtual option, was incredible. And I thought, okay, that even fueled the fire even more. So today we actually have the option to approve the school. So the next steps are that we have to send in a DPI modification form, and you have to do that with the Department of Public Instruction anytime you add a school or take away a school. You can have a school that could potentially have 0 enrollment in it when you add a school. So there's a bunch of and I put a copy of that form in my board update, as well as in the exec summary for you guys to see. So what we would be approving tonight is the addition of the West Allis, West Milwaukee Deeper Learning Virtual Academy. And then that will allow me to send the modification form into DPI, which then allows me to finish the grant process, which is due on February 17th. At that point, I will have posted within our leadership team, as we talked about in the meeting we had on January 4th, for somebody to take over that planning phase. As much as I would love to be the person doing that, I have a few other things on my plate, and I can share the wealth on that one. So we're going to ask 2 people from our leadership team to actually share that as a role. One is the lead of the project, and then a co-lead. Our principals and our leaders are also super busy right now with this returning to school and distance learning. And so we wanted to be sure we weren't asking anybody to do something that would be too taxing and really would tap into what people are interested in. And we had quite a bit of interest in being a part of it in some way, shape, or form going forward. The grant application, I'm still investigating a couple of those pieces. I have some clarifying questions for the people who host the grant through the Department of Public Instruction around how many years and dollars associated to years, because it's not 100% clear when Caitlin and I looked at the chart together. One thing we did discover is that you cannot use it to pay for staffing during the school year. And that falls in line with the model that we've set about for the charter school, which is to pay for the planning phase and get all the ducks in a row and have an internal process, to then use that moment to assess how many staff do we need based on enrollment. Then we'll be opening up those seats under open enrollment. And by June, we'll know a little bit more about if there was anybody that accepted a seat under open enrollment. Then at the end of June, we'll have a better idea of how many students we are actually serving. And so I've been doing a lot of research around licensure and what allows us the most flexibility, so that hopefully we're not double staffing a lot of things and adding to the budget. What you can use the grant to pay for is any equipment that you should need to get the school up and running, any modifications to an existing school that you have to allow the school to function. So if we wanted to modify something to make it an office in a building out of a classroom, that's something that the grant could pay for, but no major construction to build something. And then the other big thing that the grant pays for is the planning phase and a lot of the professional development. So it gives us an opportunity to pay a team to kind of get the whole thing ready. And then once we have solid enrollment numbers, to start adding the staff that we would need to keep things in function. And we're hoping the careful dance of that allows us to do this in a way that doesn't incur additional costs that we don't need, as we should know some of those enrollment numbers as we go. And then we'll be able to hire staff that have some flexibility of licensure to be able to help us go forward. So that is where it sits so far.
Questions on the virtual academy? Gary?
Yeah, so the name, the document I got off of the link is titled WAWM Deeper Learning Virtual Academy. Under DPI modification form questions, I have named the school as WAWM Project-Based Learning Virtual Academy.
Oh, I apologize, Gary. That's a typo. We went back and forth on the two names a bunch of times, and it should be the West Dallas. I didn't fill out that form and send it to DPI yet, but it would be the West Dallas West Milwaukee Deeper Learning Academy. And the reasoning for that, and I'll update that on board book so that it goes out to the public correctly. But the reasoning for that is that we are housing it inside of DACI and making an office for it inside of DACI. And we really don't want people to confuse what we're doing at a project-based learning high school versus what we're doing at the virtual academy. Once we made that decision, I thought I grabbed that name back out of all the spaces, but I must have missed one. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Oh,
So at this point, if we approve this, what sort of financial commitment are we talking about? I know we're talking about a grant to pay for some of the material costs, in that you're hoping that staffing wouldn't be needed to be added based off of our current staff, and that we would, I'm presuming, shifting teachers out of Sun buildings to fill some of these roles. But beyond that, what other financial commitment would us approving this tonight lock us into?
That's a great question. So far, the only thing that still locks us into as a financial commitment is the $10,000 for the planning supplementals. And we thought we'd get those to you sooner. And then, like I said, we had some change of interest in working on the project going forward. So that delayed that a bit. But right now, that's all it commits us to. The turning in the form, you can turn in the form to say that at some point in the school's existence, it could have zero enrollment. You could check that on the form, right? And so that keeps us, if I didn't check that on the form, we'd be obligated to have some kind of staff associated to the virtual academy as we go forward. But we'd leave it at that, just meaning at some point, could this school open with zero students? Well, yes and no, it would be open, but obviously we'd want to fill it with students. So hopefully that made sense.
Okay. Now you mentioned that this is being housed in DACI. So would it have like, a mascot? Would it have a name, like DACI is the Phoenix, right? So would it have something similar to that? Because I would like to envision this as a community, like we try to make all of our schools a community. Is that what the end goal would be? Or is it different because it's a virtual school?
No, we'd still want, because remember, part of our goal in opening a virtual academy in our community is the capacity for our kids to still also participate in our extracurriculars, right? So we want that identified as a school within our system so that it takes on that personality of its own, like we've really encouraged each one of our schools to do. So all of that process, though, the hiring and all of that actually becomes the responsibility of the charter board. And we're in the process of updating some members of the charter board. You can't have a charter board with current employees if you're applying for some of these federal grants. So we'll have to make some adjustments to the charter board in order to apply for the federal grant. So we are working on that behind the scenes. But the charter board really does have some oversight, works much the same way that Shared Journeys does. So Lisa works with the Shared Journeys Charter Board, and they make a lot of decisions that then fall under the guidelines that we provide as a school district, but they have a high level of involvement in the decisions that are made for the school. And so we'll have It all falls under the guidance of our school board, but then the charter would have its own individual board that would decide on things like mascots and things like those kinds of things as a team.
Okay. And this may be too far in the weeds, but is this something where someone could join and then be there for a year and then decide to go to, a brick and mortar school another year? And how would that work as far as, credits and like diplomas and whatnot?
No, those are good questions. And that is not too far in the weeds because those are all the questions I have to have answered before we can move into that next phase. And so if it was a resident student that chose to attend the virtual academy, it will fall under the same graduation requirements that we have for other schools, right? Because it is housed, again, because we are the LEA. So that's that it falls under those requirements. And so none of that would change. And so they would be credits that would be transferable back and forth between any one of our schools in order to prepare for graduation. So that part is pretty seamless when it goes back and forth. If it is a student that chooses the virtual academy under open enrollment, they can't simply transfer to another school because they accept a seat under open enrollment to a particular school. So that student would have to reapply under open enrollment for an eligible seat at another one of our schools.
Okay. And if someone was, say, a Hale student today and joined the academy for next year, and as a senior, say, would their diploma be Hale or would it be for the virtual academy? Like, would it be delineated, I guess, between the different schools, like Central and Hale is different,
Yeah, that's another good question. So we've moved to Shared Journeys doing a West Allis, West Milwaukee School District diploma because that is where you can allow some flexibility as far as the credits needed towards graduation and as far as how we achieve some of those credits. So that in a charter contract allows you some flexibility. So those are decisions that we'd have to figure out going forward if it was assigned as its own independent school, or we used to do a diploma from Hale or Central for the students who went to Shared Journeys, but we really adapted that because then it says that they followed all the requirements exactly as Hale or Central would have done them. It doesn't allow for the flexibility of some of the other offerings that Lisa does, or sometimes when she's able to work on a program to meet an English credit that doesn't look exactly the same at Central or Hale. The West Allis, West Milwaukee diploma allows for that flexibility.
Okay, so that's something that would have to be decided once you got more of the curriculum in place.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But likely it would be students who, because their cross between the two schools won't be there the way it is sometimes with Shared Journeys. So likely that's part of what this DPI modification form allows us to do is diploma things from a school.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments?
What about participating in athletics?
Anybody who is at the virtual academy, Bill, would be able to participate in athletics. And so much like our students at Shared Journeys or even our students at DACI can participate in athletics at their home high school. That's part of what Housing One in-house it helps with, right? Is that the students could, if they wanted right now, if they open and roll out to us and go to eAchieve, or if they open and roll out to us and go to McFarland Virtual Academy, they can't continue to participate in extracurriculars, right? And so by housing our own, they're tied to our district still, and therefore they would be able to. There's some new legislation being proposed to change some of those requirements, but we have no idea what's going to happen with that yet.
What about high school participation and what school that they would participate in, especially if they're coming outside of our district at some point?
Yeah, those are really good questions. A couple of those I don't know. We'd have to be checking with the WIAA on some of those individual situations. What we've done so far is students participate with the neighborhood school. And so that would be those, there's a couple of those kinds of details that we still have to work through.
Other questions? Okay. We would then look for a motion on 10.5.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes. Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, that concludes the regular meeting portion for this evening. We will take a quick 5-minute break. It's exactly 7:30 and meet back up at 7:35 in closed session. So we'll be at recess and meet you on the other side over there. Thanks, everyone. Okay. All right. So we look for a motion to open we're going to open. So we have to do roll call. So that
Roll call, yes.
okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Schultz,
Yes.
present. Mr. Yusuf,
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser's excused. Mr. Keller,
Yes.
present. Ms.
Present.
Klug,
Here.
Mrs. Justum,
Here.
Mr. Sickich,
Present.
Mr. Lee,
Here.
and President Emmons.
Okay. So on the table, we have a motion to take action for the strategy as discussed with council in closed session.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Recusal. Jeff,
I'm recusing myself.
any final comments, questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you all very much. Then look for a motion to adjourn for the evening.
So
Motion
move.
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
Second.
Everyone wants to move to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you all very much.
Everybody.